That morning, no one expected a single act of defiance to change military history. What began as routine training became a moment every soldier on base would remember, and one that would test the difference between following orders and doing what's right. The sun hung low over Coronado Naval Base, casting long shadows across the wet sand as the Pacific waves lapped at the shore. Petty Officer First Class Elena Vasquez stood at attention in her crisp Navy utilities, the salt air clinging to her skin like a second uniform. At 34, she was one of the few women to earn the Trident Pin of the SEAL teams, a symbol pinned to her chest after years of grinding through Bud's Hell Week's endless swims, the log PT that broke lesser wills, the silent drills where failure meant starting over at dawn. Her team, Echo Platoon, formed up beside her, rifles slung low, boots planted in the damp earth. The instructor's voice cut through the morning haze like a K-bar knife. "Vasquez, report." "Platoon ready, Chief," she replied, her tone steady, eyes locked forward. No flourish, no hesitation. That's how it was in the teams. Discipline etched into every movement. Beside her, Rex, her Belgian Malinois partner, sat rigid on his haunches, ears perked, his black tactical vest mirroring the team's gear. The K9 unit was her edge in the field. Rex could scent explosives from 100 yards, track a high-value target through urban chaos, or detect the subtle, fierce sweat of an ambush before human senses caught up. Their bond was forged in the dust of Afghanistan patrols, where a single alert from him had saved her squad from an IED. Now, in training, he was just another operator, loyal to the chain of command. The drill commenced with precision. Echo Platoon moved as one, low-crawling through the surf zone, the cold water shocking against their fatigues. Radio chatter crackled softly in Elena's earpiece. "Blue team, advance. Tango simulated at grid 2-5. She signaled Rex with a hand gesture, silent, instinctive, and he flanked her, nose to the ground, weaving through the foam. The base's routine was a rhythm they all knew. Reveille at WO 500, PT until the sun burned off the fog. Then briefings in the ops tent, where maps unrolled like yesterday's after-action reports. Ranks mattered here. Chief Ramirez, her platoon leader, paced the perimeter, clipboard in hand, noting every infraction. "Titan formation, Vasquez?" he barked during a halt. She nodded, adjusting without a word. Loyalty wasn't questioned. It was proven in the quiet hours. The ones after the mission when you checked your gear twice because someone else's life depended on it. By midday, the platoon rotated to the chow hall, the scent of rehydrated MREs mingling with the ever-present brine. Elena sat at a corner table, Rex curled at her feet under the bench, his wet fur steaming slightly in the humid air. She ate methodically. Beef stew packet, crackers, ignoring the sidelong glances from the newer recruits. Being the only woman in the platoon meant eyes on her always, measuring, waiting for a slip. But she was SEAL qualified, same as them. Airborne, dive school, SQT. Her file read like a checklist of endurance. 2 deployments, a silver star for that night raid in Helmand, where Rex's nose led them to a hidden cache. Still, whispers lingered about affirmative action slots, though no one dared say it to her face. Afternoon brought weapons quals on the range, the sharp report of M4s echoing off the dunes. Elena zeroed her sights, Rex lying prone nearby, unfazed by the controlled bursts. "Good hold," Ramirez called after her, grouping clustered tight at 300 meters. She acknowledged with a curt nod, wiping sweat from her brow. The chain of command was ironclad. Obey, execute, debrief. It was what kept them alive overseas, what built the unspoken trust in the rack room at Lights Out, where stories of lost brothers were shared in low voices. As the day wound down, the platoon dispersed for liberty. Elena chose solitude, as she often did. The base's hum faded behind her as she drove her unmarked jeep toward the outskirts of Coronado. the engine's low rumble, a counterpoint to the gulls wheeling overhead. Rex rode shotgun, head out the window, tongue lolling in the breeze. She pulled into the gravel lot of the Blue Anchor Diner, a weathered spot off Highway 75 where locals grabbed coffee and the military kept to themselves. It was neutral ground, no salutes, no ranks, just a stool at the counter and a chance to breathe. Inside, the air smelled of grease and fresh pie crust, fluorescent lights buzzing faintly over vinyl booths. Elena slid onto a stool at the far end, Rex settling at her feet with a soft huff. The waitress, a grey-haired woman named Marta, who'd served eggs to generations of sailors, nodded without a word. "Usual?" she asked. Elena confirmed with a tilt of her head. Black coffee, 2 eggs over easy, bacon crisp. No small talk. That's how she liked it. The diner was her ritual, a pocket of normalcy before the next evolution. She ate alone, fork scraping plate, mind replaying the day's drills. Rex's ears twitched at passing trucks, but he stayed alert, ever her shadow. The door chimed, admitting a gust of sea wind. A teenager, maybe 16, lanky with a faded hoodie and jeans frayed at the hems, shuffled in, backpack slung over one shoulder. He glanced around, eyes landing on Elena's table. Something in his posture caught her attention. Not the usual civilian curiosity, but a deliberate pause, like he'd rehearsed this. He approached the counter, ordered quietly, then carried a tray toward her. On it sat a slice of apple pie, steam rising from the lattice crust. Her favorite, the one Marta slipped her on slow nights without asking. "Ma'am," the kid said, voice steady but low, setting the plate down across from her. Rex lifted his head, sniffing the air, but didn't rise. Eleanor's hand paused mid-sip, coffee mug hovering. She met his eyes, clear, unafraid, and saw the flicker of intent there. This wasn't random kindness. In her world, nothing was. "You earned this," he added, sliding into the booth opposite her, uninvited but composed. "I read about you. The raid last year. Rex saved lives." Her pulse quickened, the diner's hum fading to radio static in her ears. Civilians didn't approach like this. And yet, here he was, breaching the invisible line she'd drawn around her solitude. The pie's cinnamon scent mingled with the salt on her skin, a small defiance in an otherwise ordered day. Elena set her mug down slowly, weighing the moment. Orders were for the base. Out here, conscience whispered first. "Who sent you?" she asked, voice even, but her fingers tightened on the counter's edge. The kid's smile was faint, almost respectful. "No one, just someone who knows what loyalty looks like." Outside, the sun dipped lower, painting the windows gold. Elena glanced at Rex, who watched the boy with calm intensity. The chain of command felt distant now, replaced by this unexpected test. A civilian bridging worlds, placing truth on her table like an unspoken salute. Little did she know, this encounter would unravel threads back to the base, forcing choices that echoed through the ranks. Eleanor leaned back slightly on the stool, her posture unchanging, but her eyes scanned the kid with the precision of a threat assessment. The diner's fluorescent hum seemed louder now, underscoring the pause between them. Rex shifted at her feet, his nails clicking softly against the linoleum, but he remained seated, alert without aggression. The boy's face, angular under the hoodie's shadow, held no evasion, just a quiet resolve that reminded her of the recruits who pushed through their first ruck march, eyes fixed on the horizon. "I'm Alex," he said, not offering a hand, respecting the space. "No one's sending me. I work weekends here, bussing tables. Saw you come in a few times. Marta mentioned the pie once, said it was your go-to after long days." He nodded toward the plate, the crust flaking slightly under the steam. "Figured if anyone deserved a break from the routine, it's you. After what you did overseas." She didn't touch the pie. Instead, she set her coffee down with deliberate care, the mug's base meeting the formica with a soft thud. Civilians knew fragments of her story from news clips or declassified briefs, but details like Rex's role in the Helmand raid weren't public. That operation, codenamed Desert Echo, had been tight-lipped, even among the teams. Her Silver Star citation spoke of exceptional valor in locating enemy ordnance, but the after-action report, locked in a skiff back at base, detailed how Rex's nose had threaded them through a labyrinth of pressure plates, saving 8 operators from a dawn ambush. Elena had knelt in the dust afterward, hand on his flank, whispering, "Good boy," as the helo rotors thumped overhead. "Who told you about the dog?" she asked, voice level, but her mind raced through possibilities. A leak from the platoon. Unlikely. Echo's OPSEC was drilled into them like muscle memory, or perhaps a family member of someone from the raid, piecing together public records. Alex met her gaze steadily. No flinch. The article in the Union Tribune last month. They didn't name him, but the photo showed a Malinois on leash during the ceremony. I put it together. My uncle was in the 75th Rangers, deployed same AO. He talked about K9 teams like yours, how they were the real game changers. The mention of the Rangers tugged at something buried. Elena's deployments overlapped with joint ops. She'd shared a fob with Ranger elements once, trading intel over lukewarm coffee in a tent that smelled of diesel and boot polish. Uncle or not, this kid was probing boundaries, and in her line of work, boundaries were what kept the chaos at bay. She glanced out the window where her jeep sat under the sodium lamps, flickering to life as dusk settled. The base was 10 minutes away, but the drive felt longer now, weighted with this intrusion. "Appreciate the gesture," she said finally, sliding the plate an inch toward the center, a concession without commitment. "But next time, keep it to the counter." Rex whined softly, sensing the shift in her tone, and she placed a boot gently on his paw, a silent command to stand down. Alex didn't push, just nodded, pulling a worn notebook from his backpack. "Fair enough. But if you ever need someone to talk shop with, civilian side, I'm around. Uncle said stories like yours keep the rest of us going." He stood then, tray in hand, and retreated to the kitchen swing door, leaving the pie untouched. Elena exhaled slowly, the cinnamon scent now cloying in the air. She finished her coffee in 2 swallows, signaled Marta with a nod and a 20 on the counter, enough for the meal and the slice, and clipped Rex's leash. Outside, the sea wind carried the faint tang of kelp, cooling the flush on her neck. As they walked to the jeep, Rex's head turned back toward the diner, ears cocked as if memorizing the boy's scent. Back at base, the evening routine reasserted itself like a well-oiled mechanism. Quarters at 2,000 hours. Platoon formed up in the barracks hallway, utilities pressed. Boots shined to a dull gleam under the overheads. Chief Ramirez ran the muster, voice echoing off the cinder-block walls. "Vasquez, any issues from Quolls?" She reported negative, eyes front, the diner's encounter tucked away like a spare mag in her kit. But as the chief dismissed them for rack time, a junior operator, Petty Officer Hale, fresh from SQT, lingered, fiddling with his cover. "Heard you hit the blue anchor again, P.O. Solo as usual?" She met his look evenly, no trace of the earlier unease. Routine liberty. Why? Hale shrugged, but his eyes darted, a tell she'd seen in green operators before a fib. Just. Some civvy kid was asking around the gate earlier about Echo Platoon. Said he had a message for the K9 handler. The words landed like a suppressed round, quiet but piercing. Elena's jaw tightened imperceptibly. Gate security should have flagged it. Protocol demanded reporting civilian inquiries, especially post-deployment when OPSEC threats lingered like ghosts. "Roger that," she replied, tone neutral. "I'll pass it up the chain." But as Hale nodded and headed to his rack, she felt the ripple starting. Loyalty in the teams wasn't just to orders. It was to the brotherhood, the unspoken code that protected them from the outside world's curiosities. Rex followed her to her locker, where she stowed her gear with methodical snaps, rifle cleaned, vest hung straight. In the dim light of the head washing up, she replayed Alex's words. "You earned this." Earned what? Recognition? Or something sharper, like scrutiny? That night, sleep came in fits, the barracks fan whirring overhead like distant rotor wash. At 0400, Reveille jolted her awake. The platoon stirring to the same rhythm, boots hitting deck, coffee brewing in the galley. But during morning brief, Ramirez pulled her aside in the ops shack, maps pinned to the bulkhead, the air thick with marker ink. "Heard about a civvy sniffing around. You know anything?" His eyes were steady, no accusation, just the weight of command. Elena reported the diner encounter factually, no embellishment, just the pie, the words, the uncle's connection. Ramirez nodded, jotting notes on his pad. "I'll run it through intel. Keep your routine, but eyes open. We don't need distractions before the next rotation." As the platoon geared up for beach recon, wetsuits donned, fins clipped to packs, Eleanor felt the moral seam pulling. Obey the chief, report, stay the course. But conscience nagged. Was Alex a threat or a mirror to the isolation she wore like armor? Rex trotted beside her to the surf, his wet fur brushing her calf, a reminder of bonds forged beyond words. The waves crashed ahead, cold and indifferent, as the team launched into the grey dawn. Little did she know, the kid's gesture was the first crack in the facade, drawing lines between duty's silence and the truth that demanded a voice, one that would soon echo through tribunal rooms and reform the very chain she served. The surf zone swallowed Echo Platoon whole, the grey dawn light fracturing on the crests as they launched from the beach. Elena Vasquez stroked forward in her fins, the neoprene of her wetsuit clinging like a second skin, chilled by the Pacific's bite. Rex paddled beside her in his custom flotation harness, his powerful legs churning water with efficient strokes, ears flattened against the spray. The recon drill was standard. Infiltrate a simulated enemy coastline, establish an OP, and exfil under simulated fire. Radio static hissed in her earpiece. Echo 1, maintain low profile, as she signaled the team with a closed fist pump. No words needed. The bond was kinetic, forged in the salt and silence of 100 such evolutions. They beached 2 clicks north, boots sinking into the wet sand as they transitioned to overland. Ramirez took point, his silhouette cutting through the dunes like a shadow, while Elena flanked with Rex, his nose working the air for any trace of the mock ordnance hidden in the mock village ahead. The base's perimeter fence loomed distant, a chain-link reminder of the world's edges. Her mind, however, lingered on the diner, the pie's untouched warmth, Alex's steady gaze. Intel from Ramirez's check would come later, but the unease settled like sand in her wetsuit. A civilian breaching her routine, unbidden, with knowledge that felt too precise. By 800, the platoon regrouped at the mock OP, a cluster of weathered crates simulating a forward position. Rex alerted first, a low chuff drawing Elena to a buried IED simulator, pressure-sensitive plates under the sand, their beeps confirming a hit. "Clear contact," she reported over the net, her voice clipped. "Professional." Ramirez nodded approval from the ridge, but his eyes lingered on her a beat longer. Debrief back at the surf shack was rote, gear rinsed under saltwater hoses, fins stacked in the drying racks, the air thick with the tang of brine and rubber. "Solid work, Vasquez," the chief said, clapping her shoulder as water dripped from their hoods. "K9 integrations tight as ever." She toweled Rex dry methodically, his coat rough under her hands, the ritual grounding her. The dog's eyes met hers, dark and knowing, as if he sensed the undercurrent. In the teams, distractions were liabilities. OPSEC breaches could unravel ops, cost lives. Yet Alex's words echoed, "You earned this." Earned solitude or exposure? As the platoon dispersed for chow, Elena lingered, clipping Rex's leash for the walk to the kennels. The base paths bustled with activity, a marine helo thumping overhead, recruits double-timing with rucks, the distant bark of other K9s in training. Lunch in the galley was subdued, the clatter of trays and murmur of voices a familiar drone. Elena took her tray, grilled chicken, steamed greens, no frills, and sat at the end of a long table, Rex at her feet with his kibble bowl. Petty Officer Hale joined uninvited, sliding in across from her with his own plate, fork scraping as he ate. "Chief mention the civvy?" he asked, voice low under the hum of the ventilation. She nodded once, eyes on her food. Handled. Hale chewed thoughtfully, glancing at Rex, who lapped water steadily. "Kid showed up at the gate again this morning. Security turned him away, but he left a note. For you." Her fork paused, the tines hovering over the greens. Protocol demanded she report it immediately. Chain of command first, always. But Hale's tone carried an edge, not malice, but the casual gossip that spread like salt water through the ranks. "What did it say?" she asked, keeping her expression neutral, though her pulse ticked up. Hale shrugged, pulling a folded paper from his pocket, edges worn as if handled too much. "Didn't read it. Just saw the MP pass it to the duty desk. Figured you'd want a heads up before it hits the log." She took the note, unfolding it under the table's edge. Alex's handwriting was neat, deliberate. "Ma'am, Uncle's stories weren't enough. Need to talk about the raid, not what they say. Meet at diner, 1900. Safe." No signature, just a sketched paw print at the bottom like Rex's. Elena's jaw set, the paper crumpling slightly in her fist. The raid, Desert Echo, had layers beyond the citation, whispers of a compromised asset, a local informant who'd fed bad intel, nearly costing the squad. Official reports cleared it as enemy action, but she'd seen the doubt in Ramirez's eyes during the AAR, the way he pored over SAT imagery late into the night. If Alex knew more, it could be a lead or a trap, dangling family ties to draw her out. Duty pulled one way, forward the note to Ramirez, let intel vet it through channels. The teams thrived on that structure, reports up, decisions down, but conscience tugged the other. If there was truth in the shadows of that op, burying it under procedure might let injustice fester, erode the trust that bound them. Rex whined softly, head nudging her knee, sensing the tension in her stillness. She folded the note away, standing abruptly. "Appreciate the intel, Hale. Keep it between us for now." He nodded, but his eyes followed her as she cleared her tray, the weight of the unspoken settling. Afternoon brought language qualls in the CCIF, a dimly lit room buried under the admin building, where Arabic phrases droned from headsets and whiteboards tracked verb conjugations. Elena sat rigid in her chair, repeating intonations under the instructor's watchful eye, Rex dozing at her side with his chin on her boot. Focus eluded her. The note burned in her pocket like a live round. By 1700, as the platoon broke for PT, she slipped away to the kennel block, the air heavy with the scent of hay and polished leather. Rex followed, his tags jingling softly. There in the quiet of the runs, she weighed it aloud, not to him, but to the empty air. "Orders say report, but if it's real—" Rex tilted his head, pawing the gate gently. Their bond was wordless, built on cues and trust. He'd followed her into fire, ignored decoys to find the truth. Conscience, in the field, was what separated survival from regret. She decided then, meet, but on her terms. Notify no one yet, observe, assess, like any recon. If it stank, she'd pull the chain herself. Dusk fell as she drove back to the Blue Anchor. The jeep's tires humming over the asphalt, Rex in the passenger seat, with his head on the dash. The diner's neon sign flickered to life, casting red glows on the gravel lot. Inside, Marta nodded from the counter, pouring coffee without a word. Elena took her stool, ordering the usual, the note's words replaying like a looped tape. The door chimed at 18:55. Alex, punctual. Hoodie swapped for a clean jacket, eyes scanning until they locked on hers. "Mom," he said, sliding onto the adjacent stool, voice pitched low over the sizzle of the grill. "Thanks for coming. Uncle, Sergeant Harlan Reed, Rangers, died last week. Overdose. But before, he talked about you, said the raid wasn't clean, informant was dirty, brass covered it to save face." Elena's grip tightened on her mug, the ceramic warm against her palm. Harlan Reed, the name clicked, the Ranger liaison on their FOB, grizzled, always sketching maps in the sand. He'd shared a smoke with her once, muttering about ghosts in the wire. If Alex had his notes, it could rewrite the ops' legacy, expose a chain of command failure that let a traitor walk. But admitting it meant risking her clearance, the platoon's cohesion. "Proof?" she asked, voice even, though her heart thumped like distant artillery. He slid a USB drive across the counter, small and unassuming. His journal, digital, names, timestamps. He wanted it out, but not through official channels. Said you'd understand, doing right over protocol. Rex growled low from under the stool, hackles rising at the stranger's proximity. Elena placed a hand on his head, calming him with a thumb stroke along his ears. The dilemma crystallized. Take it. Investigate quietly. Honor a fallen ranger's trust. Or walk away. Preserve the order that held the teams together. Outside, the sea wind rattled the windows, carrying the faint cry of gulls. This was no drill. It was the test, duty's rigid line blurring into morality's grey. As Alex waited, eyes earnest in the diner's glow, Eleanor felt the ripple widen. One choice, and the quiet of her world would fracture, drawing scrutiny from the ranks to the highest commands. The pie from last night sat forgotten in the fridge, but its sweetness lingered. A small act that had cracked the door to this reckoning. Comment where you're watching from. I want to know how far stories of courage and integrity can reach. The diner's counter gleamed under the harsh fluorescence, a thin film of grease catching the light as Elena's fingers hovered near the USB drive. Alex's eyes held steady, the weight of his uncle's final words etched in the faint lines around them. Too young for such shadows, yet carrying them like a rucksack on a forced march. Rex's low growl rumbled again from under the stool, a vibration she felt through her boot sole, his nose twitching toward the drive as if scenting deception in the plastic. The grill sizzled behind Marta, who moved with practiced efficiency, flipping burgers without a glance their way, the air thick with onions and unspoken stakes. Elena retracted her hand slowly, the ceramic mug cooling against her palm. Protocol drilled into her since Buddes. Unknown data sources were threats, not gifts. Hand it off to Intel, let the chain scrub it clean. That's how ops stayed airtight, how lives stayed whole. But Harlan Reed's name lingered, a ghost from the phobie in Helmand, where he'd sketched patrol routes in the dust while the call to prayer echoed over the wire. She'd nodded to his theories then, half listening amid the hum of generators and the distant pop of small arms fire. If his journal held proof of a dirty informant, it could upend the Desert Echo citation, tarnish the silver star pinned to her utilities during that quiet ceremony at Coronado, the Admiral's voice steady, for actions that exemplified the highest traditions. "Ma'am?" Alex prompted, voice low, the counter's edge pressing into his forearms. He didn't lean in, respecting the invisible perimeter she'd set. Outside, a truck rumbled past on Highway 75, headlights slicing the dusk, casting fleeting shadows across the window. Elena's mind mapped the risks. Accepting it meant going rogue, off books, a breach that could end her career faster than a failed dive qual. Yet walking away, dismissing a dead man's truth, felt like abandoning a wounded operator in the kill zone. the kind of choice that haunted ragtime long after the dust settled. She exhaled, measured, and palmed the drive, slipping it into her jacket pocket with the same fluid motion she'd used to chamber a round. "I'll look, but if it's smoke, it stays buried. Understand?" Her tone was even, no edge, but the words carried the weight of command. Alex nodded, relief flickering across his face like sunlight breaking clouds over the dunes. "Uncle said you'd get it. He trusted your team, said K9 handlers like you don't miss the signs." Rex quieted at her subtle hand signal, settling back with a huff, his flank warm against her calf. The dog's loyalty was absolute, a mirror to the dilemma: follow the scent or heel to orders. They parted without fanfare, Alex sliding off the stool with a murmured "Semper Fi," echoing his uncle's branch, though Rangers didn't claim it. Elena left Cash for the untouched coffee, clipping Rex's leash as they stepped into the cooling night. The sea wind carried the brine of low tide, whipping her hair as she unlocked the jeep, the drive's edge pressing against her thigh like a concealed blade. Back at base, the gate sentry saluted crisply under the floodlights, the barrier arm lifting with a mechanical clunk. No questions. Her ID cleared her without pause. But the routine felt altered now, the barracks paths under sodium glow sharper, every shadow a potential watcher. Quarters at 2100 was unchanged. Platoon assembled in the ready room, utilities starched, boots aligned toe to heel on the scuffed linoleum. Chief Ramirez paced the front, briefing the next day's evolutions, close quarters battle in the kill house, emphasis on team entries. "Vasquez, your K9 runs point on the breach sim. Keep him tight." She acknowledged with a sharp, "Aye, Chief," eyes front, the USB a secret heat in her pocket. Petty Officer Hale stood 2 ranks over, his gaze lingering a fraction too long, but he said nothing. The debrief wrapped with the usual. Ragtime at 2200, no cell use after taps. As the formation broke, Ramirez caught her arm lightly. "You good?" Looked spaced during the drive back. "Roger, Chief, just processing the recon." She met his eyes, steady, the lie by omission sitting heavy but unspoken. Ramirez nodded, clapping her shoulder before heading to the ops shack, his silhouette vanishing into the night. Elena walked Rex to the kennels, the gravel crunching under their boots, the air alive with the distant bark of other handlers' partners. In the run, she knelt, scratching behind Rex's ears as he panted softly, the fluorescent bulb overhead buzzing like radio static. "What do you think, boy? Smell truth on it?" He leaned into her hand, tail thumping the straw, oblivious to the human tangle, but attuned to her tension. Alone in her rack later, the barracks quiet save for the rhythmic snore of sleeping operators, Elena powered up her secure laptop under the red glow of a shielded light. No network, just local drive, air-gapped as protocol demanded for unvetted files. The USB slotted in with a click, files unfolding, dated entries, Holland's scrawl digitized in shaky scans. Timestamps from the FOB. Informant Ahmed, pushed by Brass for HVT lead. Intel smells off, but orders say run it. Photos followed, grainy sat pools of the village, marked with red X's where the ambush waited. One entry hit hard. SEAL K9 team pulled us out. Handler, Vasquez, doubted the route, but Chain said push. Dog saved it. Oh, her! Her breath caught. The screen's blue light reflecting in Rex's eyes from his bed at the rack's foot. Duty screamed, "Forward this up the line. Let JAG dissect it. Preserve the institution's integrity through channels." But morality clawed deeper. If Brass had ignored red flags to chase metrics, deploying them into a trap, it wasn't just one op-tainted. It eroded the trust that bound every salute, every shared MRE. Harlan's overdose, Alex's words echoed, could tie back, a veteran's unraveling from buried doubt. She ejected the drive, tucking it into her locker behind a stack of folded utilities, the metal door latching with finality. Dawn broke with Reveille's blare, the platoon stirring to coffee's bitter steam in the galley. PT run along the beach, boots pounding wet sand, breaths sinking to the waves' crash. Elena pushed harder, legs burning through the dunes, Rex loping beside her in harness, his tongue lolling. Ramirez noted it during the cool-down stretch, arms crossed. "Pushing limits today, Vasquez?" She wiped sweat from her brow, the salt stinging her eyes. "Clearing the head, Chief." He grunted approval, but the question hung. How long before the secret frayed? Mid-morning brought the kill house, a concrete maze of shoot houses, pop-up targets whirring to life under fluorescent strips. Echo platoon stacked at the entry, suppressed M4s at low ready, the air heavy with cordite from prior runs. Elena took knee with Rex, his vest snug, signaling him with a palm-down gesture. "Breach," Ramirez ordered, and they flowed in. Methodical, sectors cleared, Rex's nose leading to a hidden hostile behind false walls. Hit confirmed, but as she X-filed, Hale bumped her shoulder in the stack-out. "Note from the kid. Security logged another approach, asking for you by name." The words landed amid the echo of mag changes, her pulse spiking like a proximity alert. Conscience demanded action now. Confront Alex, extract the full story, or escalate to Ramirez before it breached OPSEC. But in the debrief huddle, Ramirez's voice cut through. "Tight on the K9 flank, Vasquez. Saved seconds." Praise. But her mind raced. The USB's truths could reform the intel vetting, honor Harlan's legacy, but at what cost to her own? Rex panted at her side, wet fur brushing her fatigues. A silent anchor in the rising tide. By afternoon, as the platoon racked gear in the armory, the metallic tang of oil and brass casings filling the air, Elena made the call. Meet Alex again, but with backup. A quiet tale from Hale, off books to cover her 6. Duty bent but not broken. Morality's path demanded caution. The chain of command loomed, but for the first time she stepped sideways, the ripple building toward a reckoning that would test every bond, from dog to handler, operator to institution. Outside, the sun beat down on the tarmac, helicopters thumping in the distance, indifferent to the fracture lines forming. The armory's fluorescent strips hummed overhead, casting stark shadows on the rows of weapon racks as Echo platoons stowed their gear. Elena Vasquez methodically cleared her M4, the slide locking back with a metallic snap, brass casings glinting in the bins like spent rounds from a long engagement. The air hung heavy with gun oil and the faint char of simulated fire from the kill house, a scent that grounded her amid the churn in her gut. Rex sat at her heel, his vest unclipped and folded neatly beside her pack. His dark eyes tracking her every motion, the subtle tension in her shoulders, the way her fingers lingered on the cleaning rod. In the teams, partners like him didn't just detect threats, they mirrored the unspoken. Petty Officer Hale lingered near the door, wiping down his own rifle with deliberate strokes, his eyes flicking toward her under the brim of his cap. She'd pulled him aside after the debrief, voice low in the concrete echo. "Tail me to the diner tonight, 1900. Civilian contact. Possible OPSEC issue. No report yet. Observe only." He'd nodded once. No questions. The junior operator's loyalty kicking in like a well-trained reflex. But as he slung his gear bag, a flicker of hesitation crossed his face, the kind that came from knowing this skirted the line, bending chain of command for a hunch. "Aye, understood," Hale had replied, his tone clipped, professional. Now, as the platoon filtered out toward the chow hall, the sun slanting low across the tarmac, Elena felt the weight of it settle. Duty's path was straight. Log the contact. Let Ramirez route it through intel channels. Preserve the platoon's cohesion before the next rotation. But the USB in her locker, Harlan Reed's digital ghosts, whispered otherwise. Those entries detailed ignored warnings. The informant Ahmed's ties to local warlords, Brass pushing the op to hit deployment quotas, the near ambush that Rex's nose had threaded. Exposing it could spark an investigation, reform intel protocols, honor a ranger's final push for truth. Yet it risked everything. Her trident, the team's trust, the quiet legacy she'd built one patrol at a time. She clipped Rex's leash, the leather worn smooth from years of shared dust and salt, and headed for the kennels. The base paths bustled with evening routine, operators double-timing to the gym, the distant thump of a Black Hawk on final approach, the sharp tang of diesel from fueling trucks. In the kennel block, straw rustled underfoot as she filled Rex's bowl, kibble clattering like loose change. He ate steadily, but paused to nudge her knee, a wet nose against her fatigues, a silent query. "Steady, boy," she murmured, hand resting on his head, the warmth of his fur a counter to the cooling air. Their bond was the constant. He'd followed her through minefields, ignored distractions to lock on target. If conscience pulled her off script, Rex would heal without question. By 1830, she was in the Jeep, engine idling smooth as she waited for Hale's unmarked sedan to pull up behind in the lot's shadow. He gave a single nod through the windshield. No words, just the operational shorthand. The drive to the Blue Anchor unfolded in silence, Highway 75 unspooling under the deepening twilight, the Pacific's murmur faint through the open window. Rex rode alert, ears perked at passing semis, his harness clipped secure. Elena's mind replayed Harlan's scans, timestamps aligning with the ops brief, notes on a colonel's directive to validate the asset despite red flags. It wasn't conspiracy, just the grind of command pressure, the kind that turned doubt into orders. But burying it dishonored the cost, Reed's overdose, the scars on her platoon mates who still woke to phantom blasts. The diner's gravel crunched under the tires as she parked at the edge, Hale easing in 2 slots over, engine cutting without a sound. Neon buzzed to life, open 24/7, casting red veins across the lot. Inside, Marta poured her usual black coffee without a glance, the mug's steam curling like fog off the surf. Elena took her stool, Rex settling with a soft huff, the linoleum cool under his paws. The counter's formica bore faint scratches from years of plates and elbows, a civilian echo of the base's worn decks. At 19:05, the door chimed. Alex, punctual again, jacket zipped against the wind, his backpack slung low. "Ma'am," he said, sliding onto the stool beside her, voice pitched under the grill's sizzle. No pie this time, just a water, untouched. Rex's ears twitched, but he stayed put at her signal. "You look at it? Uncle's files?" Eleanor met his gaze, the fluorescent light hollowing his cheeks, enough to know it's not nothing, but channels exist for a reason. "Why me?" Alex leaned in slightly, elbows on the counter, the scent of rain-damp cotton mixing with the diner's grease. "He said you questioned the route that night, pushed back on the brief. Brass shut it down, but Rex proved you right. Uncle felt guilty. Said he should have backed you louder. Overdose hit hard after the discharge. VA waitlists, nightmares. He wanted this out clean, no leaks, before it ate him." Her fingers tightened on the mug, ceramic biting into her palm. The memories surfaced unbidden. The ops tent in Helmand, maps unrolled under a swaying bulb, Ramirez relaying the colonel's go-ahead despite her gut on the intel. She'd voiced it, once measured. Assets profile doesn't track, Chief. But orders overrode, and Rex's alert mid-patrol had pulled them from the kill box. No fault assigned in the AAR, just successful exfil. Now Reed's files named names dated the overrides. Taking it further meant whistleblowing, a public fracture in the chain that could ripple to JAG hearings, media briefs, careers unmade. Outside, Hale's sedan idled dark, a shadow in the lot. Elena glanced through the window, spotting his silhouette, watching ready. "Proof's one thing, action's another. If I run this up, it hits everyone. Your uncle's unit, mine." Alex nodded, pulling a folded printout from his pack, a redacted email chain, Harlan's forward from a FOB server. "Start small. Anonymous tip to the IG. Uncle marked it for you. Said a handler like you knows when to trust the nose over the map. Rex whined low, head lifting as a patrol car cruised past the diner, blue lights strobing briefly. Elena's pulse steadied. This was recon, not commitment. I'll vet it. Stay clear of the base. No more gate runs. Alex agreed, standing with a respectful nod. The printout left on the counter like an offering. As he exited, the wind gusted, rattling the door chime. She palmed the paper, tucking it with the drive's memory in her mind, and signaled Marta for the tab. Outside, Hale pulled alongside as she reached the jeep, window down. Clear contact, kids solo, no tails. His voice was even, but concern edged it. This off books. Elena met his eyes through the glass. For now, eyes open, Hale. Report if it shifts, he acknowledged, peeling away first, taillights fading toward base. The drive back thrummed with tension, Rex's head on her thigh, the sea's salt seeping through the vents. At quarters, Ramirez ran the muster crisp. Any external contacts? Eyes front, she reported negative, the lie settling like wet sand. But as the platoon racked out, Hale's bunk creaked nearby, a silent alliance forming. Sleep evaded her, the barracks fan whirring like encrypted chatter, Harlan's words looped, doing right over protocol. Dawn reveal shattered the quiet, coffee brewing in the galley as PT formed. The beach run pushed her limits, boots pounding foam, Rex loping fluid beside her. Ramirez noted the pace during stretch. Focus today, Vasquez. She nodded, sweat tracing salt lines down her neck. But mid-morning brief brought the crack. An email from Intel. Civilian inquiries logged at the gate, flagged for K9 handler. Ramirez's eyes locked on hers. Know anything? The room stilled. Operators' breaths held. Duty's line blurred. Conscience demanded she step forward. The reckoning cresting like a wave. Rex's gaze met hers from the corner, steady, urging the truth. The choice loomed, reveal now, or let the ripple build to fracture. The ops shack's air conditioner hummed steadily, a low drone underscoring the tension in the morning brief. Maps pinned to the bulkhead fluttered slightly in the recycled breeze, their creases worn from countless fingers tracing patrol routes. Echo platoon stood at ease but alert, utilities starched and boots polished to a subdued shine under the fluorescent strips. Chief Ramirez's clipboard hung at his side, but his eyes, sharp, unyielding, fixed on Elena Vasquez. Know anything? He repeated, voice even, the question slicing through the room like a knife edge. Operators shifted imperceptibly. Petty Officer Hale's jaw tightened a fraction, his gaze dropping to the deck. Others held steady, breaths measured, the scent of fresh coffee from the galley lingering like an unspoken anchor. Eleanor's pulse thrummed in her temples, the USB's secrets, and Alex's printout burning in her locker like undeclared contraband. Rex lay at her feet near the door, his flanks rising and falling in calm rhythm, but his ears perked at the shift in her stance, a subtle cue only he would catch. Duty's chain pulled taut. Full disclosure now, hand over the files, let the institution's gears grind through an IG inquiry. It would protect the platoon, preserve OPSEC, keep the ripple contained. But morality's undercurrent surged stronger. Harlan Reed's notes exposed not just one flawed op, but a pattern of command overrides that risked operators on every deployment. Silence her conscience, and the truth festered, eroding the loyalty that bound them tighter than any oath. "Aye, Chief," she said finally, voice level, stepping forward one measured pace. The room's hush deepened. The only sound, the faint scratch of Ramirez's pen against his pad as he nodded for her to continue. Civilian contact off base. Family of a ranger from our Helmand overlap, Sergeant Harlan Reed, approached me twice at the Blue Anchor diner. Claims Reed had intel on Desert Echo. Informant compromise. Brass push despite flags. She paused, eyes locking with Ramirez's. No flinch. He passed files, digital journal, emails. Vetted it solo last night, air-gapped. Looks legit but unconfirmed. Murmurs rippled softly like wind through tent flaps. Shock contained. Professional. Ramirez's expression hardened. Not anger, but the grim resolve of a leader facing a fault line. "Reed, the liaison on our fob," Elena confirmed with a nod, the memory surfacing. Holland's calloused hands sketching village layouts in the sand, his voice gravelly over shared chow. "Intel's only as good as the nose sniffing it." The chief set his clipboard down on the ops table with a soft thud. "Why hold it? Chain's there for this." "Assessing threat first, Chief. Kids clean, no tails, no coercion, but if it's brass-covered, going straight up could bury it." Her words hung, the moral seam laid bare, obedience versus the quiet justice that saved lives in the field. Rex shifted, a soft whine escaping, his nose brushing her boot, a Bond's silent vote for truth. Ramirez exhaled, rubbing his jaw, the stubble rasping under his fingers. "Platoon, stand easy. Vasquez, my office, now. Hale, kennel detail on Rex. Rest of you, PT as scheduled, no chatter." The team dispersed with crisp acknowledgements, boots echoing down the corridor, but Hale's glance lingered on Elena, a mix of solidarity and caution, their off-books tale last night forging an unspoken pact. In the chief's cramped office, door secured with a click, Ramirez motioned her to the folding chair opposite his desk, cluttered with after-action reports and a half-empty mug of black coffee. The air smelled of ink and old paper, the base's distant hum filtering through the vent. "Files now," he said, no preamble. Elena pulled the USB and printout from her pocket, sliding them across the scarred wood. Her hand steadied, but the tremor came in the aftermath, fingers curling into her palm as Ramirez slotted the drive into his secure terminal. Minutes stretched, the screen's glow illuminating his face in blue flickers, entries scrolling, timestamps aligning with their op-logs. "Son of a..." he muttered, leaning back, the chair creaking under his frame. Ahmed was flagged, multiple sources. Colonel Ellis signed off anyway. Metrics for the cycle. Lena nodded, the pieces slotting. The pressure to validate assets, chase high-value targets, even when the scent turned foul. "Reed died last week. Overdose. Kid says guilt from the cover." Ramirez's eyes met hers, heavy with the weight of command. "You did right bringing it now. But this hits high, JAG, maybe IG. Your call started it, Vasquez. Platoon's exposed if it leaks." The admission settled between them, not rebuke but shared burden. The human cost of rigid systems, where one handler's doubt could rewrite legacies. Outside, the platoon formed for PT, shouts carrying faint. "Double time!" Ramirez ejected the drive, pocketing it. "I'll route it encrypted to the CO. You and Hale, full debrief after. Keep Rex tight, no more solo runs." She stood, saluting sharply, the motion crisp but her chest tight. "Aye, Chief." As she exited, Rex waited in the hall, leash in Hale's hand, his tail thumping once, a greeting laced with relief. The beach run unfolded under a climbing sun, sand shifting under boots as the platoon pushed through the surf zone, breaths sinking to the waves' relentless crash. Elena flanked the rear with Hale, Rex loping harnessed beside her, his wet fur spraying droplets that caught the light. No words passed, the rhythm spoke, loyalty tested, but holding. Debrief in the surf shack came next, gear rinsed under hoses, the brine tang mixing with sweat. Ramirez pulled her and Hale aside amid the stacks of fins and masks. COs looped in. Preliminary review starts 1400. Vasquez, your point on the narrative. Your encounter, the files. Hale, corroborate the tales. They nodded in unison, the chain reasserting but transformed. her defiance sparking scrutiny that could reform intel vetting, ensure future ops heeded the nose over the directive. Afternoon brought the SIF, a buried vault of concrete and steel, where the CO, a grizzled captain with salt and pepper at his temples, reviewed the files under redacted screens. Elena reported factually the diner's encounters, Alex's approach, Harlan's legacy. No emotion colored her words, just the procedural march, voice steady as radio chatter. The captain's pen tapped the table, the sound echoing like Morse. This could go public, tribunal if charges stick. But it mends a break we didn't see. Rex dozed at her side, oblivious to the stakes, but his presence grounded her, the ultimate trust, beyond ranks. By evening quarters, the platoon buzzed with contained energy, whispers of inquiry circulating like fog off the bay. Ramirez addressed them straight. Echo stands solid. Vasquez flagged an issue. Desert Echo intel gaps. Reviews on. We support it clean. Nods rippled. Respect in the eyes turned her way. Not pity, but the quiet salute of operators who knew the cost of speaking up. Hale clapped her shoulder post-muster, voice low. Did right, P.O. She acknowledged with a nod, clipping Rex's leash for the kennel walk, the gravel path lit by sodium lamps. In the run's quiet, straw crunching underfoot, Elena knelt beside Rex, his head heavy on her knee. The bass thrummed distant, helos winding down, waves whispering against the shore. Her act had cracked the facade, drawing the institution toward reform. Stricter asset protocols, handler input weighted higher. But the personal toll loomed, scrutiny on her record, the isolation of the whistle. Yet conscience eased, a subtle lift, like shedding a sodden pack after a long swim. Harlan's truth would echo, a legacy of moral courage amid the hierarchy's grind. As taps sounded, the barracks settling into snores and the fans whir, Elena lay awake. Rex's soft breaths from his bed a counterpoint. The ripples spread, testing bonds, but forging stronger ones. Duty and morality aligned at last. If this story already has your respect, hit the like button. It helps the story of Elena Vasquez reach those who still believe in honor. The SIF's reinforced door sealed with a hydraulic hiss, sealing out the base's midday clamor as the inquiry panel convened. Elena Vasquez stood at parade rest before the long oak table, her utilities pressed to razor edges, the faint scent of salt water still clinging from the morning PT rinse. Rex lay harnessed at her side, his breathing even, a quiet sentinel amid the room's sterile hum of projectors and encrypted laptops. The panel, Captain Harlan's CO from the Rangers, a JAG lieutenant colonel with a binder of declassified ops, and Commander Ellis himself, the brass from Desert Echo, leaned forward, faces etched with the gravity of institutional gears grinding toward accountability. Chief Ramirez flanked her, clipboard in hand, his presence a steady anchor in the fluorescent-lit vault. "Petty Officer Vasquez," the JAG officer began, voice measured over the whir of the AC. "Your report details a civilian handoff of unvetted materials. Walk us through the decision to engage off books." Elena's response flowed crisp, procedural, no defense, just facts. The diner's first encounter, the pie as unwitting bait, Alex's earnest delivery of the USB. She described the air-gapped review, Harlan Reed's entries time-stamped to the op brief, the email chain showing Ellis's directive to proceed despite asset flags. "Conscience flagged it as more than OPSEC, sir. Reed's death tied back, guilt from the cover. I assessed, then elevated through chain." Ellis shifted in his chair, the leather creaking softly, his silver eagles glinting under the lights. No outburst, just the disciplined restraint of a man facing his own orders echo. The panel reviewed the files projected on the screen. Grainy fob photos, Harlan's scrawled notes on Ahmed's warlord links, metrics reports pressuring validation. Ramirez interjected once. "Vasquez's K9 integration pulled us clear that night. Her doubt was the first alert. Should have been heeded." The room stilled, the weight of what if settling like dust after a patrol. By 1500, the panel recessed, voices murmuring in the corridor as Elena clipped Rex's leash for the wait outside. Hale waited nearby, leaning against the cinder-block wall, his nod subtle, a shared vigil. The bass thrummed on, helos chopping air overhead, the distant crack of range fire, operators double timing between evolutions. 2 hours later, the door reopened. The JAG officer emerged first, gesturing her in. "No fault on your engagement, Petty Officer. Materials authenticated, partial corroboration from Ranger logs. Colonel Ellis, you're relieved pending full review. Intel protocols under revision. Handler input mandatory on asset briefs. K9 alerts weighted in risk assessments." Ellis stood, saluting the panel before turning to Elena, his eyes meeting hers without evasion. "You did your duty. Beyond it. Reed's files. They needed air. Apologies for the push." The words landed quiet, a concession in the hierarchy's shadow, the first crack of reform. Elena returned the salute crisp, her voice steady. "Understood, sir, for the team." As he exited, the panel turned to her. "Your actions sparked this. Quiet channels preserved, but truth elevated. Commendation pending. Mentorship role in new protocols." Rex's tail thumped once against the deck, sensing the shift, his wet nose brushing her hand. The platoon debrief came at evening quarters. The ready room packed shoulder to shoulder under the overhead fan's lazy spin. Ramirez stood at the front, the air thick with the tang of chow hall remnants, reheated stew and instant coffee. "Echo, listen up. Desert Echo inquiry closed preliminary. Intel gaps confirmed, reforms incoming. Vasquez flagged it, her call, her integrity. We stand by her." Nods rippled through the ranks. Hale's first and firmest, the unspoken brotherhood reknitting tighter. No cheers, just the measured respect of operators who knew the cost. Knights replaying doubts, salutes held a beat longer in the rack room. Post-muster, Elena walked Rex to the kennels, the gravel path silvered by floodlights, the Pacific's low roar carrying on the breeze. Alex waited at the gate, cleared for a supervised visit by Intel, lanky frame silhouetted against the chain link, hands in pockets. "Ma'am," he said as she approached, voice low over the distant bark of other K9s. "Heard it went up. Uncle'd be proud." She nodded, unclipping Rex's leash to let him sniff the boy's outstretched hand, the Malinois' tail wagging slow. Files did their work. Reforms means safer ops. Handlers like me get a voice. Your part mattered. Alex's eyes glistened briefly, the weight lifting like fog off the bay. "He talked about you constant, said loyalty like yours, dog and all, keeps the line straight." She handed him a sealed envelope, Harlan's redacted journal pages, cleared for family release. "For closure. Stay clear of the wire now." He took it, nodding, and walked out under the sentry's watch, the gate clanging shut behind him. Back in the run, Elena filled Rex's bowl, kibble clattering into stainless steel, the straw rustling as he settled. Her hand lingered on his flank, the rough fur warm under her palm, a bond unbroken by the scrutiny. The inquiry's ripple spread, memos circulated base-wide, K9 units integrated deeper into briefs, moral input formalized in the chain. Her trident felt heavier now, not burden, but symbol, proof that conscience could bend the rigid without breaking it. Weeks blurred into routine evolutions. Beach recons at dawn, the surf's chill shocking through wetsuits as Rex paddled flank. Kill house breaches, where his alerts shaved seconds off entries. Ramirez pulled her for mentorship sessions. New handlers in the program, green faces wide-eyed over chow, absorbing her debriefs on trusting the nose. "It's not defiance," she'd say, voice even, maps unrolled between them. "It's the edge that saves the squad." Hale stepped up too, co-handling Rex on quals, their alliance forged into quiet reform. One evening, Liberty Call, Elena returned to the Blue Anchor alone. Rex kennelled secure, the jeep's engine cooling in the lot. Marta slid the pie across without asking, steam rising from the lattice, cinnamon sharp in the air. She ate slowly, fork scraping plate. The diner's hum a civilian counterpoint to the base's discipline. No intrusions, just space earned. Outside, the sea wind whispered through the palms, carrying the faint salt of waves. Her reflection in the window showed lines etched deeper, 34, trident pinned, a symbol now of moral strength amid the rank's unyielding order. In the institution's quiet evolution, Elena Vasquez became the handler who bridged duty and truth. Her defiance a legacy etched into protocols, ensuring no operator followed a tainted map again. Loyalty, from dog to chain, proved the strongest command. Subscribe for more stories of loyalty, courage, and justice within the ranks. Thank you for watching the case of the woman SEAL ate alone at the diner, until a teen placed her favorite order on the table. See you in the next one.